Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Elliot and Neil for another entry in the Steven Spielberg Retrospective. And today we have reached the Lost World: Jurassic Park, the weirdest title format I think I've ever seen, and I might get into that later because it's been really weird finding that out this year. That it's so important that the Lost World comes first. Where was Dominion: Jurassic World? Where was 3: Jurassic Park? I don't know. But I've just really been surprised by that over the last few months. But before we get into any of that stuff, how are we both doing tonight?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Not bad, yeah, pretty good.
Excellent. As I said, I'm glad to get you both on. And I did want to get you both on for Jurassic Park 1, but we couldn't make it happen. So I do hope this is a polite, thank you, we've got you on for the other one. It's not quite Jurassic Park, but we'll probably be bringing up Jurassic Park a lot, the original. So we're going to get some conversations in there. And as always, want to hear from everybody in the comments below. Comment below your thoughts on The Lost World, Jurassic Park, or Jurassic Park 2. I don't know which way around I'm going to call it yet, but as always, hit the like button to comment. And if you're a fan of Steven Spielberg, if you're a fan of Jurassic Park, why not hit the subscribe button? There's not going to be more Jurassic Park videos on the way, but we have had reviews out for Dominion, Jurassic Park 1 a few weeks before this, and lots of stuff in the past of previous Jurassic World. So you can find more Jurassic Park stuff there. And if you want to find out about our videos, when we do stuff, when we go live, the best way is to find us on social media. We tend to announce everything via our Twitter feed, and that's Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And we have a link in the description to our Redbubble store. We can pick up some merch if you wanted to. There's no Jurassic Park styled merch. It wouldn't look as cool. Because Jurassic Park is just one of the greatest logos ever made in cinema, as far as I'm concerned. And what I'm actually going to do, I kind of said this before we went live. Obviously, we didn't get you both on for Jurassic Park 1, but I really want to quickly ask you, which is pretty important to this film. What are your sort of thoughts on the very first Jurassic Park film, or its impact on you, or anything like that? I jump to Elliot first.
Yeah, so Jurassic Park is definitely one of those films I remember growing up with, and it's stuck with me all the way since. And I think, as for a lot of people, it informed my love for dinosaurs. That was it. So a bit of weird, probably too much information, but I've got a heart condition. I used to have to go up into London for yearly checkups at a hospital in South Kensington. So I would always drag my parents to the Natural History Museum and go see the dinosaurs every time we went up. And I think Jurassic Park kicked that off for me, making sure that I go see the dinosaurs at Natural History Museum. Yeah.
That's great. Neil?
I actually saw it in the cinema the first time I saw it, and I was 93, so I was years old, very, very young. I was 8 years old, and I went to see it, and I was terrified of the T-Rex scene where it attacks the car and all that, to the point that I went to the toilet and I was in there for a very long time, and my cousins were concerned about me because they were just wondering why I'm in the toilet for so long. But that was why it was terrifying. I've never lived it down. I don't care. I love this film. And that first time you see the dinosaurs, you're in that moment with Sam Neill and Laura Dern. And that it always hits me hard. I always cry every single time. And I saw it at the Royal Albert Hall with a live orchestra, and that's one hell of a way to see it. And funnily enough, I'm actually connected with Elliot, as you just said. I also had a heart condition where I had to have yearly checkups, and I went to the same hospital as well.
Yeah.
There was Harefield, and there was that one as well. That's so funny. But yeah, just fun fact for you.
That's pretty cool. Great coincidence in a nice way. I've been to the Naturalist Museum a handful of times. I think the first time we went was to see the dinosaurs, and I think the exhibition was on tour, or at least the main attraction was, and I was defeated. And I've not been in many years since, but that is something down the line. And because and also, I guess, not that we're getting paid for this, I wish we could. There is going to be a Jurassic World exhibition at the XL opening later this year. On the photos, there looks like actual animatronics, which is amazing because we didn't get them in the film. I'm just going to make that dig, sorry, and then I'll leave it there. But I'm tempted to go, but I would be curious. I think it opens in October or August. I don't really know, but if there are big dinosaur fans out there. If you can get to it's always the big question. There's going to be some cool stuff on it. It's probably the same place they had the Marvel exhibition. If anybody got to go to that, but yes, do check that out if you're a fan, because that potentially that could be really cool. And obviously, we're talking about the sequel tonight, The Lost World: Jurassic Park. And as always, I'm going to kick off with the official IMDb plot synopsis. For this series, it can be a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it's one line, sometimes it's like 2 paragraphs. And today's nice and easy. It's pretty legit for once. It's a research team is sent to the Jurassic Park Site B Island to study the dinosaurs there, while an InGen team approaches with another agenda. Straight to the point, not giving out like 20 names that's unneeded. And I'll say fair play to them, because it doesn't happen often. And what I'm kind of going to go with, following on from we just did the first film, I'm going to ask you both. Can you remember the first time you saw the sequel, perhaps, or your early memories with it, and how they've been over the years?
I think part of me feels I might have seen this one at the cinema. I was just having a quick look to see what its parental guidance rating was, and it's PG. So I definitely could have been able to see it at the cinema at the age I was when it came out. I feel like I did go with my dad, because one thought that has always stuck with me from when I was 6-7 years old was being slightly confused about the actors on screen, because I remember Dr. Grant and Ellie Sattler and from the first film, and I remembered Ian Malcolm. But when you see Ian Malcolm in The Lost World compared to Jurassic Park, Jeff Goldblum looks very different. And my 6-year-old brain couldn't quite figure that out. And so I recognized that it was the same character, but I thought it was a different actor. Even at that age as well, the concept of an actor playing a character still hadn't quite embedded in yet either. So, my memory is kind of being really confused with that. And then getting Peter Stormare confused with Sam Neill, and thinking that he was playing Alan Grant, and being really horrified that they killed Alan Grant off in the second film. So they are my memories of The Lost World from when I first saw it, is just being 6-7 years old and confused about actors.
His character is so different from the first and second film. Like, I wouldn't blame you for thinking it's a completely different person, because like the first one is like full of personality. He's probably the most annoying but most interesting character in the first film, whereas the second one, he's just a bit boring, to be honest with you. He's just not as fun. I mean, maybe his experience with Jurassic Park has sort of beaten him down a bit, but then I don't know. He seems like a completely different character. I can't remember the first time I saw this film. I must admit, it probably was in the cinema, but I can't quite remember. But one of my main memories of this is the fact they had 2 T-Rexes, and them, ripping one character apart at one point, which is who is very much now. That's one thing that's always stuck in my memory, like always in a really sadistic way. I always look forward to that bit. I'm sorry, I just do. It's a great death, and I love seeing 2 T-Rex instead of just the one. I can't remember when I first saw it, but I watched it recently, and it doesn't hold up as much as it once did.
Fair to say, and I think we'll be able to talk about that, because obviously the first one is so iconic, and I'd imagine in '97 not many people thought we're going to get 4 more films in the following 25 years. I didn't even think we'd get a 4th one, if I'm being honest, when I first saw these. And if I'm going to go with my memories of this, is quite hazy. I think I would have said in the Jurassic Park video, it's not out yet at the time of us recording it, for anyone curious about our sort of behind the scenes, and we've got the window back up of recording to release dates. I was at my grandparents' house. I think it might have been a Christmas or something when I was younger, and the opening scene of Jurassic Park 2 was on. I obviously didn't know what it was. It was obviously the beach, the girls, and I always was really curious by it, because I was younger again. I'd never seen anything like it. I knew what dinosaurs were, and I knew what Jurassic Park was, but I'd never seen it. And obviously I just remember the screen and the great. Not that I knew what a transition was at age, but I just remember that opening scene. It's so vivid, and
it's really good.
Yeah,
and then it would be one of the best transitions ever.
Well, it is 100%. And it pops up every once in a while. It comes up on Twitter. I was like, I'm going to let this get to the end of the clip, because it's just so well done. And yeah, the film was turned off because it was like an event, and you shouldn't be watching a film. We shouldn't be watching a film. Blah blah blah. I can't remember what the event was, and I didn't see it till many years later. I'm quite a late bloomer with Jurassic Park. If I'm being honest, I think I saw Jurassic Park 2 for the first time when I was probably like 16 or 17, straight after watching Jurassic Park 1, and I don't mind it. It's not as good, but even like watching it again today, like I still think. I'm just going to say, I think this one just gets a lot of unjustified hate.
Yeah.
And I would just say it's because it's not Jurassic Park 1. If I'm going to be honest, and I've not read the books. I think we were supposed before that we'll get into some of the production shortly with the sequel book. I'm going to be honest, I didn't know there was a sequel book. So that's how limited my Michael Crichton like bibliography stuff is. But yeah, it's a real fascinating one to see this because Jurassic Park 2 and 3 just always had this weird vibe, like before. I don't know you guys' history of Indiana Jones, but I avoided Kingdom of the Crystal Skull on the basis that everyone said to avoid it. I was younger, obviously, not that it's like I have seen it now. But I think Jurassic Park 2 and 3 fall into that. People like don't see these as rubbish, but actually they're not. They're not the original, and 3 is questionable. 3 is very short. But even when I saw 3 for the first time, I'm not going to do a review on it on for the series because you didn't direct it, but 3's got some fantastic stuff, and people just get hung up on the dream sequence, which is funny, which is terrible. But there's some good dinosaur stuff in there, and I'm just going to be blunt. Like, you watch a Jurassic Park film to see dinosaurs, I hope. Do I want to watch a Jurassic Park film to learn about cloning and engineering of things? No, but bring it up if it's something to do with dinosaurs. And I'm not going to get into a Dominion rant, but it's really interesting, And I think in this film we do get a lot of dinosaurs. We get some really cool stuff, and even just going to the premise, I kind of actually want to ask you before we all get into the film, what do you make of the whole concept that there was a second island, and the second island is their natural habitat? Because I think it's fantastic. I think it's the best way for them to do a sequel that isn't opening the theme park.
Yeah, I agree, and because I rewatched the film today as well in preparation, and when we get into favorite scenes, I'll go a bit deeper. But that opening scene between Malcolm and Hammond, it's very quick into the film. You're 15 minutes in, and the whole film's been set up already, and I think that's what. Everything's explained there. Hammond explains, look, in just a couple of sentences. Yeah, look, site A was the park, but we did all the breeding and everything and the rearing over here in site B, and it was like, yeah, that makes sense. Cool, great, crack on. For me that does work, and as I say, like, it sets up the rest of the film going forward, and the clear sort of idea as to what both parties going to the island are doing and why, and it works really well for me having a site B.
I think this falls into the trap of almost every single sequel, and that is it feels forced. Because we saw sort of breeding and stuff like that happening on the initial island, so this sort of felt a bit forced. I can understand them sort of maybe breeding some on a different island, but it just felt a bit too forced. But even with that, it's still one of the sort of better Jurassic Park, Jurassic World sequels because it's still enjoyable. Yeah, the idea of a site B it's an interesting one. I think it's the only way they could have done a sequel, because otherwise they would have just been treading over old ground and almost doing the same thing. But with this, they did come up with something fresh and something new. I don't know if there was like a plot in the book or anything about that this is based on at all, or this was just something that was just thought up, or I'm not familiar with that at all. But I think that as forced as this was, it's the only way that I could sort of see them doing a sequel. And they did it fairly well with sort of adding dinosaurs and bringing new dinosaurs as well was a good way as well.
No, I'm glad that force is a really interesting phrase to use, because if we actually quickly go into some of the behind the scenes, this really surprised me, Stacey. So I guess grow up in the more modern media environment, you get a big you get a big hit, you're going to get a sequel on the dot. It's going to be announced like the opening weekend these days. And the condition was that the sequel film would only be made if a sequel book was published by Michael Crichton. And that happened in '95. And from, I'm going to be blunt, I've not researched this massively because I've not read the novels. It would have been good if I probably should have, but that's a lot of commitment for just 2 reviews, if I'm going to be really polite. And I kind of thought that makes sense that he probably had pressure from fans. He probably had his own pressure of thinking his film would get an adaptation, and you'd also imagine there's probably a bit of studio pressure as well, saying, listen, we'd love to make a sequel. What can you do? And 2 years is a short turnaround for a sequel, if I'm being honest. As a book, films we know can be in development hell, or they can be done the next day. But with novels and writing, it's a much longer process, I tend to find, when you read into it. And it really surprised me that was one of the conditions they had to do. And going to an elephant in the room. Now, obviously, neither of you on the Schindler's List review, which me and Tom did last week, if I'm going to be blunt, it's not at the time of us recording this. It's one of the most difficult videos I've ever done on the channel, but it was a very good video to do. And I actually would encourage people just to watch it because it's very eye-opening, just us two just reading into it and speaking. And one of the reasons Spielberg didn't commit to this is that after Schindler's List, he did take time out of the industry. And he also founded DreamWorks at the same time. And the report is that he wasn't signed up to this film when it was announced. He signed up to it about a year before. He was on a break, and over the years, there's been comments made and suggestions that as the filming began and the filming continued within this, he sort of lost more interest and is quite critical of it. I found that really fascinating, and I kind of want to jump both you, not talking to him as this directly, because that's a bit unfair, but going, as we've said before, like you go from Jurassic Park to Schindler's List, then back to Jurassic Park. That, and I know there's a 4-year gap in between, Schindler's List and this, and that's the longest gap of his career. I checked it before we went live today as well. But the juxtaposition he had doing the first, doing Schindler's List anyway, of doing post-production Jurassic Park, to go back to this, I think is a very admirable decision from a director. And I think it's something where you read maybe his thoughts across filming, and I can understand why he might have wanted to distance himself throughout filming. It's a very tough question to put on the spot for you both, but you kind of see where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I suppose, I actually haven't seen Schindler's List, so I can't, but, I've heard everything around it, and certainly by the way that you're talking about it currently, it, in a way, sort of makes sense that if he's going to step back in, he would step back into something a little lighter like this, something where, I guess you can have a bit of fun, because I imagine the production of Schindler's List, it was kept quite serious. Well, certainly I assume everyone would have felt that way anyway. And so you would expect, moving on to this and taking this project on, he wanted something that was just gonna, especially as he eventually, not too far after this, he was doing Saving Private Ryan as well. So, it makes sense to me that you'd come back and try and aim for something lighter, even though some of the reports from production for this film was that it was not necessarily easy all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think going from Jurassic Park to Schindler's List to Jurassic World, the Lost World, it makes sense to go to something light. And I know that for Schindler's List, he didn't take a fee because he considered it blood money. So he kind of he either donated it or he just didn't take it. The interesting thing with this is how different these films are, and what it shows what a filmmaker he is, or what a diverse filmmaker he is, and you can see that throughout his back catalogue. But with this, going from Schindler's List to doing this is unbelievable. Perhaps he should have taken more time off, but I agree with yourself, Elliot, that him coming back to do something light, almost to ease himself back into the industry, is a good way to go.
Yeah, and then Eddie mentioned he's doing Savoury Pie. Ryan Amistad's next, which I've not seen. I know that's a film about savoury as well, and I think when we've got that sort of 90s mature Spielberg, it's very fascinating seeing how his progression as a director just reaches new heights like every week at this point of doing the series. And with this one thing I want to bring up, which is actually my favorite thing, probably actually one of my favorite things in the film, which I found it was his idea. The concept of bringing in the hunters. I'm just going to say, we'll get to him later on. Pete Postlethwaite, I can never pronounce it. Pete Postlethwaite is one of the greatest screen icons of British cinema. I haven't even seen Brastoff. I've seen enough clips from it. I've loved him in everything I've ever seen him in since I was younger. Obviously, James Giant Peach is a massive one for my age group. But every time I watch Lost World, I get excited that we get to see him. But I just love the dynamic and this was Spielberg's idea. So he spoke that in the first film, it's very much the carnivores and the herbivores, not against each other, but you have the clear divide of knowing what the dinosaurs are going to be. And Spielberg wanted to put that into the humans. So essentially, he called I don't know what you'd call them, the main group, Hammond's team. He called them the gatherers. I guess nowadays they'd be like, not protesters, but you get comments, don't you, that Vince Vaughn's in Greenpeace, didn't even know Greenpeace was a thing in the 90s, if I'm going to be honest, against the hunters who, are hunting these for sport and for business. And I just want to say that to me is an incredible concept. I love this, and I'm just going to point to the blatant fact this would happen in real life. There would be rich people, and not to just get political, but they would be like, "Oh, there's an island full of dinosaurs. Can we just hunt them, please? Can you? We know how they do it in real life. Football owners, my club owners done it, and we all hate him, and that kind of stuff. It does happen, and in the same way, Jurassic World. I forgot the sequel's name.
Fallen Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom. When they're selling them off, that would also happen in the real life. And there's some real life things which I love what they do with this. But I just want to say the fact that Spielberg came with that dynamic, I thought that would be something from the book. And I think is actually one of the strongest points of this film. And obviously that does lead into San Diego, which surprised me the most is that Spielberg came up with it a few weeks before filming started. Yeah. Very King Kong-esque, I'm just going to say. Yes. I've never minded the San Diego stuff, but a lot of people don't like it. I just kind of want to jump both to you guys. I know it's not really in the story angle of it yet, but how do you feel with those big story choices? Because I think it does work for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's... For what I feel about the San Diego thing is that however long that sequence is what Fallen Kingdom / Dominion should have been. And I think especially considering what the premise that was written for Dominion is completely to what Dominion is. Like Dominion's premise is that last half an hour of The Lost World. And it kind of plays for me as a better Dominion than what Dominion was. Yeah, I think you get what I'm saying. I always really enjoyed it. I remember as a kid, I freaking loved it, especially the bit. Sorry for dog lovers, but the bit when he eats the dog and the family are the parents are just like arguing over the nightlight, and then they just turn aside and there's a T-Rex that's just sadly eating their pet dog. I don't know. I think all through, since watching that as a kid, I just love that bit. That was the bit I always waited for as a kid. Was the T-Rex unleashed in San Diego?
I love that bit as well. I think the bit with the dog, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's eating the dog and it's like there's a chain and like the dog house like hanging from his mouth.
It drops to the ground just to make sure. Just so no one can know that the dog definitely wasn't alive. Like that house has been squashed.
It is dead. It is. I apologize to dog lovers as well. I'm a dog lover now, but it's so funny. I love that bit. I really, really do. I don't know why, but I've just always enjoyed the bit in San Diego because, like, that's going to happen. You absolutely know. They're bringing it to like a city like that's what's going to happen. But it's done so well. It's done in such a fun way. The story choice of the hunters and the gatherers. I didn't know that was sort of a thing that they were going for. Obviously, I knew there were two separate groups, but I didn't realize that's what they were referred to as. So that's very clever because that's very much, that's such an old school way of thinking, like the way that man and woman are, or what have you, or husband and wife are. and it's very clever. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what people would do now. They would pay to go to a lion. They would go and hunt them down, and there would be protesters against them, and that's exactly where we would be. Yeah, it's quite forward thinking in a way, because I don't think that sort of hunting of game and big game or what have you was as big as it is now, and we see so much more of it now. That was really clever. Yeah, I didn't know that they were called sort of hunters and gatherers, but it does make sense.
I think equally, just on the back of that as well, it's in the same vein of, you would have people go out and hunt. You would have people like the gatherers who would go out and want to just document, the way that Nick goes off about, I'm going to get the Pulitzer, like that's it, it's done. Like, I've got a picture of a Stegosaurus, like, you're effed, mate. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's on both sides. Yeah.
And as well, like, for 1997, like, we're sat here in 2022, and I'm not going to get into a whole human rights thing about you should be able to process. You absolutely should. And if anyone's curious about the date we're recording, we've had some more runs trying to get themselves run over at a Grand Prix today, and it's just like, I don't feel that these sort of conversations would have happened in the 90s. Someone mentioned forward thinking. I was like, I think that is at the to me, maybe as I'm a bit older, but things like pizza or like animal rights activists, I couldn't imagine that being a conversation in the 90s. In the same way, this is a really random point. Like, recycling wasn't big when I was younger. It's only felt like I was like the early 10s where like households have done it, and it's very forward thinking, and it's really interesting. Sort of 25 years later, it feels even more real than it probably was in the 90s. Like, the way they're sort of laughing at Vince Vaughn when he mentions he's a green priest, and they're like, "Oh, why are you them?" He's like, "Oh yeah, because girls." And it's like, sort of stigma is like, I guess that probably would have been the stigma back then. Whereas nowadays, I mean, the Jurassic World series have done it with their own like dinosaur charities, agency type things. Like, it's a given. It does happen, and I think it's really fascinating. It's a fascinating choice of Spielberg, and we're going to kind of move into his directing with this. It's going to be difficult doing this compared to the first one, but when you're looking at the direction of Spielberg in this film, it's really hard, not to say just because of the Schindler's List, it's very different, it's very personal, but it doesn't feel as much like a Spielberg film as some of these other blockbusters. But at the same time, it doesn't not feel like a Spielberg film.
Sure.
It's not, Jurassic Park. I don't mind Jurassic Park 3. That's Joe Johnston that did that. And obviously he didn't do the World films, but when you get to, we're lucky we're here again 25 years later. We've seen the Jurassic era, if they're going to leave it at an era now. And his two stand out to me by a country mile. I've really, really liked the first Jurassic World, if I'm going to be honest. I really like that one. But I've never had the engagement of wow from the other ones. And it stands alone compared to them. But with the series have been doing his complete work, it doesn't stand alone in compared to some of those. So I hope I'm not sounding too harsh on the film here. But I think there's a lot of great stuff of his in there. But I don't feel like he's ever touching or breaking new ground, which is what, we know he would do throughout the 90s. Obviously, Saving Private Ryan's a few weeks away, which is going to be a mega one for me personally to speak about. I'm kind of curious, like, do you guys feel the same? Any of his sort of, not just signature traits, but where I'm kind of coming from, like that Spielberg magic, and I don't feel like we have it as much.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean, and I think where it's mainly obvious is the fact that we see more dinosaurs. Like, you know how you're sort of saying, when you look at the first film, the T-Rex, we have the T-Rex, like it doesn't feature that much. It's got obviously the main reveal with the cars. You've got that brief moment when it's chasing down the Gallimimus, and then it comes back again at the end, and the bit when it chases after Sadler and Malcolm in the car with the hunter. But I think in this film, straight away from the beginning, we see dinosaurs in the very first scene. Whereas when you compare that to the first Jurassic Park film, the opening scene, someone gets eaten by a dinosaur, but you never see the dinosaur. And I think that, we always, the thing that always stands out about Jaws is that, it's ages till you see the shark. And I know a lot of that was due to production, but it also what makes the monster scary is not seeing the monster. And we see dinosaurs much more in this film. However, that being said, he still does have the moments where he doesn't show the monster, like when Eddie and Kelly are in the high hide, and you just see the trees shaking, and you hear the thunder, the earthquake steps, and then later in the long grass with the raptors as well, and just the flick of the tails as they grab the guys. So yeah, I think he still gets his little flares in of, I'm not going to show you the monster, the fear is within the unknown. So he hits those elements, but at the same time we do get a lot more dinosaur action I feel anyway, compared to the first film.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it to me, it doesn't really feel like a Spielberg film for most of it. Yeah, and I think one of the issues is the amount of dinosaurs in it. Like I said, it was great to see sort of new ones, but they just kind of hindered the type of film that it is when you compare to the first one, where there was kind of a pared back feeling to it, and that was obviously intentional. Whereas this one, I've seen people be quite critical of how many times, like, one of the T-Rex heads is sort of looming on the side of an object, like the tent it sort of pokes its head into, or like a building or a car or something like that, before it does anything. It's like, would a T-Rex do that? Because I feel like it didn't really do that in the first film. It just went and attacked or what have you. This, to me, I always forget this is a Spielberg film. I must admit, I always forget he's directed it. The first one, it will always be a huge memory for me for the fact that he directed it and it feels like his film. But yeah, I think those moments, like the raptor scene, is astonishing in The Lost World. Like, it is one of the best in the whole series, or whole franchise, because it's so clever. Because I remember, I think I put it on the other day, and I think it was like halfway through or wherever it is, and I remember like these guys like running into this long grass. It's like, oh yes, it's coming up. So just watch to that bit where they're all just attacked, and like it takes a while for you to actually see. I think one of them like jumps at one point.
Yeah.
But what you initially see is just those lines of grass just moving. It's beautiful shots.
So good.
It's really good. Elements like that are very Spielberg, but I think the film as a whole doesn't feel very Spielberg.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I'd actually say, the more I think about it, it kind of stems in the characters, not to criticize the characters, and it sounds like blasphemy to criticize Jeff Goldblum, but Ian Malcolm isn't. It's an interesting choice to have Ian Malcolm in the film, I would say. I know this is where I'd love to get some gossip behind the scenes if there was any, but Ian Malcolm is the primary focus in the Lost World book, the sequel. Not Grant and Sadler, and they're like, was that a conscious studio thing? Did they know they wouldn't be able to get Laura Dern and Sam Neill back potentially? Obviously, they got them back for the third one, so maybe not. But it's really interesting that obviously Malcolm's the main character, and I love the aesthetic of let's take him back, and he doesn't want to go, which is the key point. And how are we going to get to the point of him needing to go in? That's the big question. And the characters don't, as much as I love them, I never feel like they're like built for that Spielberg film. And I know that normally he has like young actors, and I actually don't mind Kelly, who's the daughter in it. I know that that's something that's mocked online a lot because she takes out a velociraptor with acrobatics. I'm gonna be blunt. It's stupid, but I really don't mind it because it's dinosaurs.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to take a dinosaur from that seriously, they really need to sort themselves out. But it's just, there's always something missing, I feel. It's interesting what I said about, maybe it's because there are more dinosaurs, and that's a really good point with it, because it's just the first one was so extremely well directed in its way to unveil any dinosaur we see. Everything has a perfect setup and execution, and I guess when you're making a sequel, the audience has seen the first one, and they know there's going to be dinosaurs, so they expect dinosaurs. And what I'll say, the T-Rex stuff, I love the fact we don't get them to like an hour in again as well. And then I don't know, it was a big thing at the time. There was 2. I don't know if that was in the marketing, but I feel that if I was watching it for the first time now, I'd be like, oh my god, there's 2 T-Rexes, and poor Eddie. That's, and I'm just going to say, I feel like I was malice, but a lot of people online really criticize Jurassic World for killing Zara. I don't want to get into a political stance. probably because I'm not a woman. Obviously, there's sort of feminist viewpoints behind it. I understand that, but I just like to say that Jurassic Park has a history of horrifically murdering innocent people. And Eddie got ripped in half by 2 T-Rexes. And he was like tortured in the build-up, like he was stuck in that car. So I'm just gonna say, like, it has that. I will say this is like one of the more violent ones. Like the amount of blood we get to see. Was it rated PG as well when this came out? And you've got like the trickle when I always forget his name when he gets killed by the little ones, and then when the geezer gets lifted in the air, and it's just like from Red Waterfall. You're like, whoa! Like this is in a Jurassic Park film.
Even during that moment, there's a crunch. There's like a brilliant. There's such a great sound. I love that bit. It's so cool.
But and like the Eddie death as well.
Blood.
Yeah, the crunch is great because then it just goes like dead silent after that crunch as well. But like even with Eddie as well, like before they rip him in half, the T-Rex drags him out by his leg, then flips him in the air, catches his body, and then his leg gets ripped off by the other. It's gruesome, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Oh, it is brilliant.
I think you can get away with it. San Diego is just, and what I love about Spielberg is that he's such a. This sounds really horrible. Not a child, but that he is a child of cinema. That he loves going to the cinema. He loves the experience, and I feel like he probably had so much fun choosing how people die. It sounds so sadistic, but when you're in San Diego, the one that always gets me is the guy that's running to the door. And he can never open it. And this, again, like the sound effects in this film are honestly incredible. And you just hear his pain just getting quieter and quieter until he's gone. And it's just, that whole sequence is just amazing with what he gets to do. And I should have really checked who the sound department is. I'd imagine it's the same that's done the Star Wars stuff. There are some carryover sound effects. The sound of one of the dinosaurs in this, the Triceratops, is what George Lucas uses for the Banthas in Star Wars, which are now, by all means, a Star Wars sound effect, which completely blew my mind today. I thought, Jurassic Park's borrowed from Star Wars, when actually it's been the other way around. So there's a Star Wars facts again, and you'll know that that's Lucas and Spielberg being like kids behind the camera with each other. Like, can I borrow this? Sure thing. And I just love their relation. You know who, I'll say this really random, George Lucas would have made a fantastic Jurassic Park film. If that's the one film he could have done, I'd have loved to have seen him do more, maybe like a Lost World type, more so than the original, I'll say. But he'd have had a lot of fun, I feel. And I think there's, those two just have an incredible history. But if we're speaking, we might as well stick with the characters, because we spoke a little bit about, our thoughts on San Diego, what we think of the New Island story. But I just kind of ask, I felt like I was being a bit harsh on Jeff, but how do you both feel with Ian Malcolm coming back and sort of his character arc with, obviously, Julianne Moore's playing his girlfriend, Sarah. We've got his daughter in it. It's very personal to him. Do you think it works? And is he a character that should have had a personal life?
For me, it's always worked. I absolutely love Ian in this film because, mainly the one-liners he comes out with every other second. When I was watching it this afternoon before recording, I was howling with laughter again. Like, even though I've seen this film God knows how many times. I do think it's interesting because, especially when you go back to the first film, the chat he's having with Alan when they're in the car before the T-Rex attack, and he's like, he's asking about Ellie if she's single, and he's like, I'm always looking for the future ex Mrs. Malcolm, and I think we kind of get a glance into that further. The fact that he's going on this mission to rescue Sarah. He's trying to leave Kelly with another girl another woman he's seeing as well. And I'm just like, that carries over from the last film. He's this guy that he sees a pretty face and he's like, I've got to say hello, And I kind of like that carryover. And then, I guess it then sort of also, because he does again speak about his kids in the first film, doesn't he? He mentions that he has kids, and so it's nice to see one of those kids. And it's just, when you watch it and you see Kelly come in, and you are like, hang on a minute, where even though I know that Jeff Goldblum is, he's a white guy, I was like, I still had to look it up stage, just be like, what is his heritage? Like, do you make this work in any way? And it kind of race-wise, it very literally doesn't. And I know Nick and Eddie comment on it later on in the film as well. Nick asked the question, do you see the family resemblance? But for me, what is interesting, and I think this kind of comes from a lot of what I talk about on my channel with representation, everything, it almost just kind of plays off in the end as just a colorblind casting with Vanessa Chester coming in. But for me, it works because I'm pretty sure I read in the IMDb trivia that Spielberg had seen Vanessa in another film, and it was off of that which he cast her into this one. And so it when you see a race swapped character and people complain and they say you should just pick the best actor for the job, and this is one of those moments where Spielberg has just picked the best actor for the job. He knew that she was going to play this part, and she did. And so for me, I don't care if it doesn't make any sense. If we look at it from a literal standpoint, it's in a film where people have cloned and bred dinosaurs. So who gives, So yeah, I just want to say it because I just watching it today, I was like, you know what, I just love this because they do feel like a father and daughter, and it's great to expand on Ian's character because the first Jurassic Park film, it's Alan and the kids, and now we get to see more of Ian. Yeah, that was very long-winded, but yeah.
I must admit, I've never questioned it. Questioned them using Ian Malcolm as character in this film until now, to be honest. But it doesn't really bother me. I feel like maybe it was a popularity choice because he was very popular in the first film, so they just kind of went with that. But either way, I think it's absolutely fine. I don't see a problem with it at all. I've said earlier in this video that I don't think he's as fun as he is in the first film. He does have some lines in this film, but I feel like he's slightly pared back for some reason. But he's become more of a worried father, worried boyfriend than anything else. I must admit, I didn't think that the person he was going to have look after Kelly was another woman he was seeing. I think it was just like someone he knew. I've never picked up on that, but yeah, it probably is, to be honest with you, knowing his history. I think he says he's got 3 or 4 kids or something like that, and I think he's got even more in Dominion, which is it's just great.
He's the Lando Calrissian, isn't he, of the Jurassic universe?
Can't keep it in his pants. Anyway, but yeah, I was quite happy to see him again. And yeah, the thing with Kelly is I feel like it would be colorblind casting had they not put that little comment in from Vince Vaughn. Yeah. That's the only thing. Otherwise, I totally agree with you. But that I found to be a really strange comment. I just never really understood why you would include that.
It's almost a way of covering their own backs, really, isn't it?
Maybe, yeah. That's frustrating, though. It's so unnecessary.
Yeah,
it's interesting because Spielberg has an adopted daughter who's of color as well, and I think he spoke when this came out. I'm glad you mentioned about I forgot the name of the film she was in, but apparently he asked her for an autograph. Spielberg asked the actress for, which is incredible in its own right. And yeah, I wonder if there's a bit of awkwardness where they're like, "Oh, is someone going to say something? Do we need to crack an awkward comment?" It's a very interesting conversation actually with that regard, but I think it does work. And just going off the Ian Malcolm stuff, this is the guy that was the most critical of Jurassic Park in Jurassic Park before it went wrong. So for him to come back to the sequel, you really need to justify why is he of the 3 going to be the one they get? Why is he? Why? But also, why would he go and do it? And it does make sense for it to be somebody very personal to him. Yeah. And obviously, with that comes the the trope of the child that sneaks in and goes with them, which just adds to that. And he's very restricted in this, but also he's been through the whole Jurassic thing. What I loved, and I know why they couldn't really explore it because it wouldn't actually work for the film, but I love that in the 4 years that followed, InGen's obviously set him up, destroyed his reputation. I love that sort of because it's like 1 or 2 conversations, but it's so fantastic because just to say it, that would also happen today. There would be people would be covering up that sort of stuff, and it's really interesting. We get to see a bit about his life and how he didn't take the hush payment in the same way the others might have, and I think it's a really, really fascinating, few short scenes, and I guess that sets up one of the villains in the film as well, which is obviously the nephew of Hammond. And but when it kind of comes to both of that, is Julianne Moore in this probably one of the most not underrated actresses because she's had an incredible career. Not really somebody we all associate with blockbusters, if I'm going to be honest. And
Yeah.
I'm going to say I don't mind her in this. I think she's fine. I think obviously she's obviously a bit younger than most of the films I've seen her in, and to me it strikes me as like, oh wow, I always forget like Julianne Moore was in a blockbuster, but it happened to be Jurassic Park. I think she's fine in this. I've not got a problem with her. We don't get too much development, but I love the idea that she's not like in love with Ian Malcolm because she wants to use him at all in that regard, but they sort of set up this dynamic that she's always loved the dinosaur angle where he hasn't. And I think it works for as the film progresses, their sort of thoughts on it both.
Yeah, she I mean she's a good foil for Ian in a way, I think. You know, that as you say, she wants to be there. She wants to learn everything she can, because when will a paleontologist ever get to learn about, you know, the natural habits of dinosaurs? So yeah, it's really interesting. And there was a real interesting bit of trivia on the character in IMDb, in that everything she warns other characters about or tells other characters not to do, she does. You know, so she's like, you don't do this. You know, she says that, you know, after she pets the baby Stegosaurus, she's then telling the guys, you know, we're strictly observational. We're not doing anything. We're just standing, you know. And I think that's what works lovely about her is that you know, and she says to Ian, you know, look, I love you, but I don't need you right now. I'm here to go do my thing. And I think you're right. There needs to be, if there was just that little bit of development that maybe comes out, that she, you know, she does things, but she doesn't want other people to do it because she's trying to protect them. And it would kind of play nicely with Ian being like, well, I've come here to rescue you. And he could have maybe like just, you know, brought a different dynamic to that relationship later on in the film. But it doesn't bother me that it didn't go that deep, because I think she already works as a lovely foil to Ian.
Yeah, she said she doesn't need rescuing, yet there are times in this film she's very much the damsel in distress, which is a little annoying. But there are also times when she puts herself in danger really stupidly, where she like takes the dinosaur away, or she has blood on her one of her jackets or something like that. And it's like, you should know better. You're being an idiot. She's an all right character, but she's so underdeveloped and just underused. And when it's one of the like classic thing, like when you have a certain actor and actress in your film, don't underuse them, and that's exactly what they've done here. I like Julianne Moore, but yeah, I'd have more of more.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And how do you all feel about Kelly? Because I said she doesn't need to be developed too much. We get the whole subplot, you know, that she's obviously got a distant father-daughter. She wants to go. She wants to rebel. And obviously, it's the coming of the moment things happen. She's like, I need to get off this island. I want to go. I shouldn't have come. And I think she works absolutely fine. I've got nothing wrong with the performance. And I've said this a lot of times across the series. I think Spielberg's the best director in the world for working with young actors and actresses. Clearly looks after them on set and all that sort of stuff. And I don't feel there's a problem with her. And it's quite endearing, actually, that he'd already seen her in something and clearly wanted to cast her in the film, as to what we said earlier, that I think that means a lot as well, rather than, you know, probably going through an entire casting choice. He probably straight away, I want her in Jurassic Park. Let's get her in. And I quite like that from him. I think it works in his favor. But, you know, we don't need to have too much developed with her, I'm being honest, because like Lex and Tim in the first film, you bring in the younger person for audiences to align to, but also for that sense of, you know, it's that parental guidance. The first film is Sam Neill playing you know, the distant father in a very weird way, and it was quite literal in this sense. So yeah,
I think I agree with that. I don't think personally, I don't think I could see how else you would develop her further anyway, because, you know, it tracks that, for me it tracks anyway, that once a kid gets scared, and they want to, they kind of go to that stay in that fight or flight mindset. I can't see how you would develop her further. So I like the character, and, you know, I think like Tim and Lex, she's just a way in for a younger audience as well, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't mind her at all. I think she's kind of fine. They've got a really good dynamic, her and Goldblum as father and daughter. And I really like the fact that he's obviously not the type of dad who would bollock her or anything like that, because she's at one point like almost telling him off for not telling her off more often, and like go to a run or what have you, which is a great dynamic. It just shows the kind of like almost absentee father that he is, but there's obviously a lot of love and caring there. I think people who slag her off are clearly forgetting that in the third film we had some moron who was always carrying a parachute around with him just in case he went up against some pterodactyls. Like, what a fucking idiot! It's so stupid. God, I hate that film. The fact that there's someone who comes on this channel who loves that film. I love her, but I disagree with her opinion. Hi, Charlie. It's just, I just like the gymnastics bit. It's like, well, it's fine. It's just like it's just a fun little moment. That's all.
Yeah.
It's not like she's got to carry something around with her. It's just a skill that she has. She's fine. And
also, it's probably the only way to survive a velociraptor is actually being acrobatic. Not that we'll ever know, but surely that would actually help. You want someone that's like, I've trained for the shot put to take down a velociraptor. It's like, no, they need to be able to like get around.
Yeah, I've got one criticism of that bit when she says "hey," but then she's still flipping around and flipping around for like a kid. I don't know, 10 seconds. It's like, you don't need the "hey." Take that out.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
But yeah, it's because what's nice about what is actually really nice about the gymnastics bit is that it comes up earlier in the film where he's like, oh, you're on the team, and that kind of sets off. I think for me, that's what sets off her rebellion against him. But then it comes back later that she uses it to save him. So it's I think that's a real interesting foreshadowing there.
Yeah, and wait till she goes back to school that year and says, guess what I did over some riot? I kicked the ball out through the window. There we go. Back on the team.
Back on the team.
I can't wait till this. We get to talk about I didn't even know his name, by the way, until just the last 3 hours. Roland Tembo, aka Pete Postlethwaite. I've got to say, his introductory scene, he has many fantastic scenes in this film. Every time he is on screen, it's a joy. But that conversation, and I'll give Spielberg all the credit in the world, the editing, whatever, they give him his monologue, and it's just so well done. I just want to keep listening to him and the entirety of Jurassic Park. And the most beautiful thing is he survives. And on paper, if you were going to plan a Jurassic Park film, you wouldn't be. Normally, you plan for which villains are going to have the grisliest death possible. That's always the Jurassic Park way. I've always seen it, and obviously, it goes to the InGen CEO for this. But I love the fact he survived because he's had his 180 in life, that he's lost somebody close to him because of what he does, and he's actually got a really satisfying character arc and a hidden point. He actually beat the T-Rex. He did beat it, but I just love Pete Postlethwaite in this, and it's just the image of him like as a hunter just works, and I'm just going to keep saying I love him. So if anyone else wants to jump in, because he's just an absolute legend of British cinema.
Yeah, he carries all the weight and gravitas needed for that part, doesn't he? And yet, and I say carries like weight and everything, but it's still. I mean, he's just floating on cloud 9. You can tell he's having fun. It really just comes across that he's going, do you know what? This is my chance to be in a Jurassic Park film, and I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. And yeah, it is just a beautiful performance. That, as you say, that introductory scene, that monologue is just gorgeous. It's one to always just stand to attention to and watch. I can't say much more than that, to be fair.
He's very good at chewing the scenery, as I say, and it's just like is the perfect person to play that. He's like there is a some sort of villain-esque hunter of some sort in I think all 6 films in some sort of way. Maybe not all 6, but most of them there's similarities, or a hunter type or what have you. And he plays it so well. He's just it's so much fun. He just wants to sort of get in, get the job done, and leave, and that's kind of like all he wants to do. He even doesn't want his fee at some point. I think he says, Yeah, and he kind of like gives up with trying to like explain like what the dinosaurs look like. It's like the one with the pointy head, like, just like
Elvis. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say any more, but he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just he's just one of them. I think you just miss him off his films. Like, obviously I'm a massive Nerd fan, so when I watched Inception, but I remember the first time I saw this film, I was like, it's the guy from James the Giant Peach, like hunting dinosaurs. And obviously, when you're younger, it's like it's kind of you don't know the name. And the one thing I was about him, because I've massacred the pronunciation a few times already today. I think David was the story that when he begun acting, his agent's like, you need to get stage surname. That they won't do it, and he goes no. And I just love it because it's just, and shout out to Charlie as well, because if she's watching this, she did a tweet recently that no one in her film set knew who he was, and she was tweeting photos of watching Jurassic Park.
God, I know.
Completely blew my mind.
Ridiculous. Yeah. On a course where they talk about study film, like, for God's sake, morons.
And like, without giving too much, it's not like a normal. It's a master's, so they're above. They should be above normal. Yeah,
they should know a lot more.
Definitely, and I don't know if anyone wants to speak about any others. There's so many characters in these films. As always, if anyone wants to speak about another character, go for it. There's not much to say really about Vince Vaughn, if I'm going to be honest. But if anyone wants to speak about, I always forget the name of the nephew of Hammond, Peter Ludlow.
Ludlow, yeah.
The main reason why, unbelievable villain death. As I said, you can't go wrong with a good villain death, and getting fed to the baby T-Rex after his obsession with it is honestly just not like poetry. It rhymes, George Lucas quote, but you've been waiting for him to die from the first minute. And sometimes these films think, oh, is he going to survive? And they don't waste their moment to feed him in this. And I think it's a great ending.
No, yeah. I mean, Arliss Howard just absolutely exudes snooty Brit, doesn't he? I mean, he's just he's just brilliant. He sells every minute of it, and I really like it. And I just love the moment towards the end when Ian just leans over to him and goes, "Now you're John Hammond," and it's just like, it's great. It just that's it. You're cemented as the villain, and I always love his just when he's about to die and just his little wait. He's just like talking to the dinosaurs as if they're actually gonna chill and just let you run out and escape, and it's just brilliant.
All dinosaurs understand English. We should know that by now. Yeah. He's another one who's like a really good villain and really played well, but in sort of difference to Pete Postlethwaite's character, he's kind of like the one who you can kind of see him selling this to people and voting Tory. But yeah, he's very much like one of those. Who's like, again, I think we've seen this in future Jurassic films. I would say maybe I just remember Fallen Kingdom, like the Toby Jones character. Like he reminds me a bit like that. I don't know if you remember him, but he was kind of like selling the dinosaurs to these people, like one who's auctioning them off. There's something similar with the personalities. He's good. I'd say I want to mention Eddie, who had a great death because it's an amazing death. But also, they killed, a West Wing character. How bloody dare they? Just ridiculous. Richard Schiff, who was like super, like, I know, weirdly, I know more from The Lost World than Westworld, but West Wing. Getting my worlds and wings and wests all mixed up now. But yeah, since watching West Wing, he's a fantastic actor. He's really good. I love him in this. I think he's really fun. He's kind of sarcastic at times. I don't know why, but I'll never forget the scene where he's describing what the high hide is. It's just when he keeps saying high hide. It's a high hide. You go in there and you go up and you hide and you hide. You hide high. It's like, for God's sake, stop saying high hide. Yeah.
I always thought it was the high, not hide. I as a kid, I never picked up that he was saying hide. I just thought because you're going really high, so you're high.
Yeah. But isn't that it was a bit stupid because it's like you're at perfect biting distance. I think like Jeff Goldblum even like points that out.
So good.
Yeah.
And I do love the continuous joke between them as well, about the satellite phone, just the whole way through the film. And when they see the dish in the hunters' camp, and Ian's just like, "Hey Eddie, you think their phone will work?"
I think there's a point where like Ian Malcolm's like hitting it, and just kind of just about here in the background, they say, "Yeah, violence will work with technology," or something like that. It's so sarcastic. Oh, that's great.
Still, the best bit is that Ian Malcolm's like, he's still known as a chaos theorist. Like, what is? I've been doing this for 2 months. Like, what is a chaos theorist? And I don't really need to know, but it's Jeff Goldblum, so it just works. It's who you'd want to do it. And I really want to quickly give a shout to, I think one of the most like a really underrated character, which is like Peter Stormare plays Stark in it, who gets pretty grisly death behind closed doors. Don't want to show it, but he's just sort of useless when he's like electrocuting the little ones.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's
Peter.
just he pops up in a lot of films. I think he's a very good actor. And every time, really unironically, when I was at school, we had to watch like a Rise of Hitler documentary, and like he was one of the main actors in it. And I always recommend of being like, he'll pop up in random things like 22 Jump Street, and I'm like, what? I think it was in like The Flash when I used to watch it, or whatever, and I was like, he just appears in all these things, and it's just, I think he's great in this. And I'll just say this: Spielberg very rarely, if ever, gets casting wrong, and this is not one of those films. No matter anyone's sort of thoughts on these, and kind of we're going to move on to something we're not spoken about tonight. John Williams, obviously doing another Spielberg score. Almost got that mixed up then. Now, I'm not going to be horrible because I love John Williams. I don't think this is one of his best scores, but I'm just going to sit here and let you guys speak because we didn't get you on for the first Jurassic Park one. So if you just want to chat about the Jurassic Park theme, go for it, because it's John Williams doing a Jurassic Park theme. Nothing can go wrong with John Williams doing Jurassic Park themes. I just felt like the soundtrack just doesn't have that oomph the first one does, but at the same time, the first one is on such a level above that it's pretty hard to ever come. Even Giacchino's not been able to get anything near to what Williams has done.
Yeah. Growing up as a kid, Star Wars, the original trilogy, and the prequels were always and have always been my favorite set of films. I think with my friends and work colleagues, they will always know me as a massive Star Wars fan. I say this because obviously John Williams scored those films, but the Jurassic Park theme for me is hands down his greatest ever score, in my opinion. It's my favorite, just easily. I think it just really speaks into that sense of adventure and wonderment, and that we are just seeing something that seeing the dinosaurs is seeing something completely magical and sort of once in a lifetime. So I really appreciate it for that. I like the score in The Lost World. I can see why maybe it doesn't land as well for you, George. It might be because he sticks to that one track he sticks to quite a lot, which is a beautiful track, but it does come back for like every sort of establishing moment and we are journeying somewhere shot. So I can see why it probably bogs people down a bit, but I think it's a lovely new track. I just think his work on these two films is beautiful.
The Jurassic Park theme is, it's absolutely one of the greatest of all time. I think it's probably out of all of John Williams' work, it's my second favorite. I think my first is Imperial March, but the theme is, it's so iconic. There was this really beautiful version of it that was kind of like slowed down to like a 1,000th of the speed, and it was just like stunning to listen to. It was long, but it was stunning to listen to. It's what you think of when you think of Jurassic Park. Like you think of the dinosaurs and you think of the score. I think they're one and the same. What amazes me about Spielberg is how many iconic scores, themes he has. I cannot believe the amount of films, like he's got Indiana Jones, this, Star Wars, and so many more, that when you hear the music, even like Schindler's List, it's beautiful music, and you can't really separate them at all. because he becomes so iconic with the film that it's related to. It's incredible. With The Lost World, I think there are some parts of the score which are really good. I think there are some parts during, I think the Velociraptor scene. There's some I just remember some like drum beats or something like that initially, maybe to go with like the footsteps of the people and the Velociraptors. But nothing else really stands out. I can't remember much of the score, if I'm being honest. And when I think of Jurassic Park, the thing I think of is this theme, and it goes to show. And I think they used the theme in elements or parts of it in Dominion, so it kind of says a lot that a score from 1993 is still being used for a modern film now.
It's just John Williams, just one of the calling him a legend is the understatement of the year, isn't it? And it's, as you said, you listed some films. You can list like 5 films, and you'll forget he did like Harry Potter as well. And
oh my god,
it just doesn't stop there, does it? Because he's just on another level. To I think, and I've always said, Hans Zimmer's my favorite composer. I absolutely love Hans Zimmer. But I would give anything I'd trade any of the 6 times I've seen him it'll be 6 next year to just get one John Williams concert in London, please. Because it's just, he's announced, I guess behind the scenes, he's announced he's going to be retiring or hinted at retirement after Indiana Jones 5. Have the best enjoyment you can ever wish for, John. You deserve it. And then to come out and say, "Oh, it's actually so I can focus on doing concerts." I'm like, an absolute legend. Like, it's not even a retirement. It's not even a retirement. He wants to do more work, more travel. But it's just, an incredible career, and even with films like this, and Williams score I speak about, but it's still Jurassic Park, and you get the John Williams theme that goes with it. So, and I don't think he didn't do Jurassic Park 3. He was doing AI for Spielberg instead, which is probably like a get out of jail card thing, maybe. But if we're going to end the soundtrack, we'll get into some of the. We always speak about the box office and the Oscars stuff. So I'll jump to Oscars first. Obviously, it's more of an open blockbuster, just one nomination. Best visual effects didn't win. Not really a problem. It's a big blockbuster film, but its box office I'm really curious by. It grossed 618 million worldwide, an astronomical hit still, second highest grossing of the year. If anyone's curious, that one, it was a little film about a couple on a boat called Titanic, so obviously it wasn't going to outgross that. And the first one did gross 900 million, so it was probably never going to reach those heights as well. But it's very fascinating, and it's hard to pull at box office and have a discussion around it when the first one's broken so many records. But how I always feel with franchises is that your big opening one, the one that is going to break records, that is this gargantuan hit out of nowhere, very, very rarely gets topped by a sequel. A lot of the time, you might get the third one, round off a trilogy or something down the line. But there's not really a conversation I'm going to be putting about the box office. But is anyone, would it have been a big shock in 97 that Titanic outgrossed Jurassic Park? Maybe at the start of the year, but Titanic was out for like 10 months apparently at the cinema, something insane.
Well, considering Titanic's one of the highest grossing films of all time, I guess it's not outside the realms of probability, possibility, whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's. I prefer this to Titanic, but whatever. That's just a personal preference. But it's no surprise. No, as you say, it's one of the biggest films of all time. So it's hard. It'll be hard to beat.
No, definitely. I guess that's going to round into. We've spoken a lot about some of these scenes. Is anyone? If I was going to ask everyone for their favorite scene, do they have one direct? I'm trying to actually think, because I like a fair amount of scenes in this. I'm trying to think what I've not spoken about, but I'll go to you first, Elliot.
Yeah, mine will always be the trailer over the cliff. I just think the tension in that is just perfect. And watching it today, you just kind of see how just each sort of new thing that comes in to just slow them down, getting up, slow Eddie rescuing them so that he can have the death he gets. I just think it's when we talk about, when we spoke about earlier, like, does this feel like a Spielberg film? We kind of leaned that not so much, but I think this scene for me personally, it's just a masterpiece in directing tension. It's just beautiful, and the cast great. I love Julianne Moore's just slow, scared movements on that glass. I think she is brilliant there. But then it also, I just love how they are able to hold onto that rope for so long as well. Wow, I mean, the pull-ups they must do.
That's definitely one of my favorites as well. But I think that and the Velociraptor scene in the long grass, where you see their tails flick up and what have you. But it's more, excuse me, it's more just the wide and high up shots of seeing all these people scrambling around, running away, and then just these lines coming through. It's beautiful. It's so simple, and it's just that something is coming, but you don't see what it is for a while until you see a few people sort of go down, their tails flick up, and eventually one of them jumps up and jumps up onto one of them. It's a great scene, and again, I think there's a lot of tension there, and it's just that's where the dinosaurs are used really well. Like they're overused in some areas, they're not used that well in other areas, but in this particular scene, they're used really well.
I love we're not really speaking about. I love the whole T-Rex in the camp / the waterfall moment. Seeing the giant animatronic is always amazing to see, I think, for when they're doing this. And I think the waterfall concept was something they wanted to do for the first one, but just couldn't do. I don't know if that's maybe in the first book, but that poor bloke that gets squashed on, and he gets it's like a plunger. He just goes along for about 4 or 5 more stomps on the T-Rex. It's just amazing, and I think that's a really well done scene. And that guy that's he's dead. He's a snack, and then just Jeff Goldblum just pops up through the water. But it's just, I think even the tension there is really well. The daughter's doing okay, Julianne Moore's doing okay, and it's just someone's going to wake up because there's 100 of them there, and it's just a really well done scene. And one thing I'll say is that when you've had a T-Rex scene like the first film, and I guess it's similar to the Raptors, you don't just want to repeat the same things. You don't want to have a T-Rex breaking out of a fence. You don't want to have raptors going around a base for them. The genius of the long grass, having the T-Rex in their own habitat and having 2 of them, it just adds so much more. And I think it's really exciting thing. And one thing that I love, it's not a favorite scene, but I love how the pterodactyls at the end of the film. It's so frustrating. I mean, I know they're in the 3rd film, but it's kind of like, could you imagine? I know not like a sport generation, but could you imagine if a film this came out today? People would be screaming like, "Why is the pterodactyl in the last few seconds, not the entire film?" But Jurassic Park 3, fantastic birdcage sequence, I'll say. But I'm trying to think of any of this, but that might do it for our review of not Jurassic World, The Lost World : Jurassic Park. And if I'm going to head into my final thoughts, it's really interesting because I think it's fine from a blockbuster standpoint. It's very entertaining. It's watchable. It's not too long. It's 2 hours, 8 minutes, I think. And it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great characters I enjoy spending time with. When you look at it from a Spielberg film, it's obviously, to me personally, not up to the level of his other work. Yeah. So looking at it as a perspective from the series is so different to its real place. I just want to kind of say, there's nothing wrong with a film being fine. And I guess it's more of a message for the other Jurassic Park / World films that you're just never going to get to the heights of the original, because it's like not lightning in a bottle. That's really unfair. But to me, Jurassic Park isn't a world building franchise that, calling it the Jurassic Saga era, it's so weird for me because I understand that for Star Wars, for Marvel, for DC, if they ever got there, and so many other things. But a film about dinosaurs coming back to humanity, I don't know if that's really something that should have ever been a saga in a really non-horrible way. But I just think for a sequel, for them coming back to the park before everything that came after, I think it does a fine job of that. And as we spoke about for over now, there's some really good stuff in this. Maybe I don't know if it's the consistency, the final touch. I'm not sure what it is that's missing. But I have a lot of fun with this. But I see it again, obviously. and I'll be really curious when I do get this. What I will say is, for this series, it's really weird. We touched upon this with Indiana Jones. It's so weird watching his films that have become franchises in sequence with his career, because it's like, I'm not going to watch the Temple of Doom straight after watching Raiders. I'm going to wait a few weeks, and it was. I'm just going to jump back to the big one for the side. Like, Schindler's List in between two Jurassic Park films is just an extraordinary feat. And I said it a lot the last few weeks, but how an individual person is able to release Schindler's List in the same year as Jurassic Park, each be one of the best blockbusters of all time, one of them being one of the best films of all time. I struggle to see how that was made possible by an individual, but it wasn't. Just a testament to Steven Spielberg as a director in his career.
Yeah. I mean, final thoughts on Lost World for me is it holds up as a good sequel. I think this and the first Jurassic World. I don't mind Jurassic Park 3, but I think this one and Jurassic World are the strongest sequels to the first film. And I think you're right. Like nothing within this saga now is ever going to hold a candle to the first film. But I think this does a very good job at that, a very good attempt at that.
My final thought is I like this film. I think I like it less than I remember, but I think it's still a worthy sequel to one of the greatest films of all time. And I think you're always going to struggle with your second film when it comes to this. It's similar to bands and their second album. You've got all your life to create your first album, then you've got 2 years to create your second album. There's going to be issues there. It's similar with this. It's what came out a couple of years after the first one or something like that, or maybe 4 years after the first one.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be issues there, because I think it is quite a difficult task to follow up with one of your best films. And obviously this doesn't hold up, but there are some great Spielberg moments, and there are some great action shots and what have you. So it's a good film, it's a fun film, but not as good as the first.
No, definitely agree with all of that. And as I said, if you guys are watching at home, maybe disagree, maybe you do agree, do let us know. Please comment your thoughts on the Lost World Jurassic Park, and please answer this question: is calling all the other films Jurassic World making the title for this really frustrating to talk about? Because you can't call it Jurassic World. It's not quite Jurassic World, but it's got it in the title to a degree. Maybe Jurassic World: The Lost Park will be the eventual 7th film if we ever get it. Who knows? But please do comment, and if you're a fan of this video, if you like this video, please consider hitting the subscribe button. A lot more Spielberg stuff on the way. There are no more dinosaur films, but there are a lot of films about many other things. I'm trying to think of something really nice, because I was about to say something about Saving Private Ryan. Then it's a lot of family films as we get into the 2010s. You've got the BFG, you've got Tintin, you've got a lot of other stuff. So there's a lot of really good Spielberg videos coming up soon, and we'll get over those. And speaking of coming soon, a film I've not seen, one we'll be covering for the first time, is Amistad. That's going to be out Tuesday, the 26th of July. I know pretty much nothing about the film, but literally it's about slavery. So I'm kind of really curious to see it and to see how he does, this, then Amistad, then Saving Private Ryan, which is, 3 very different films. So it's always exciting to see what Spielberg comes up with. Even when you've got like The Post followed by Ready Player One, like 3 months apart, it's just, it's incredible how he can operate at the time. So yeah, if you're a fan, check that out. And I'm just going to show what is currently seeing. I haven't named up a lot of them already, but I said Amistad is next week. Then heading into August, we've got Saving Private Ryan, AI, Artificial Intelligence, and Minority Report, which I'm actually really looking forward to. I've not seen that film for a long time. And just a bit of behind the scenes again about today. It's Tom Cruise's 60th birthday today, time of recording, and judging off all the cameras at the F1 today, had a lovely time at Silverstone. So yeah, it's going to be, we're heading towards the noughties of the career for Spielberg, which is always amazing. But today isn't possible without both of you two helping me. So Elliot, I have your channel and your social scrolling below. People don't subscribe and follow, which they should. What can you tell them about Hakuna Matata?
Yeah, so Hakuna Matata is your place for everything positive in diversity and representation. I love to be that little positive corner in the internet that finds the good stuff, because there's great stuff and people are too negative about it. So I want to be positive about it. So if you want that as well, come and find me over at Hakuna Matata.
So everybody, please do. And Neil, we have your Twitter here, but we're obviously recording this. We're recording this in advance. By the time this episode comes out, a little series would have just finished called Miss Marvel, done by Marvel. So it's obviously not a little series. where else can people find you than your Twitter feeds? Hashtag local celebrity.
Well, you can find me on the Empire podcast, unbelievably, which I can't believe I get to say. Yeah, I've recently been. I've been joined. I've joined them at the Empire podcast for their spoiler specials of the weekly Miss Marvel. So I've done episodes 3 and 4. Hopefully, doing more, and yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, more is to come. But yeah, on my little Twitter feed is just me rambling about all sorts of films, all sorts of nonsense, and we all love that shit.
Definitely. Please do follow Neel on there. And to plug, before you spoke to Empire about Marvel, you used to do it on Cinema Savvy. So the Marvel
Yes.
MCU Infinity Saga retrospective, we did it back in lockdown last year. It was a long time ago. But that's how we first got you on for this channel. And I'm just going to say, because I've not been able to see you in person since you've been at Empire, it is pretty amazing you've been on this. I haven't seen Miss Marvel yet. I will be watching it by the time the finale is out, and there probably will be a video on this channel for it. But it is very exciting to see you doing it on there. So honestly, thank you both of you for coming on. It's been a really fun discussion. And I was kind of a bit nervous about doing Jurassic Park 2, just because, again, behind the scenes, we recorded Genesis yesterday, so it's been a pretty intense weekend of recording, if I'm being really honest. And it's been amazing to chat dinosaurs and also everyone be so positive on it, because, as I said, this is a film that gets a lot of, I think, unfair hate, and it gets piled in with a lump of the other Jurassic Park films, which is a bit unfair, as we've discovered. So, as I said, comment your thoughts, and our links are in the socials, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to say thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week. So take care and see you then.